voice and my teeth smacking together. Hi. And then you pan it to the right, and then pan to the left. Are you all right? Hi.
Greetings, cyberspace, and welcome to episode 4 of the Double Density podcast with your hosts, Brian and Angelo. And starting today, we've decided to devote our podcast to an entirely new line of thinking based on further feedback that we've been getting from the podcast. So, Angelo, would you run us through what you just did and what we're planning to do with the podcast from now on?
I think we're just going to switch to an ASMR podcast. People liked my whispering in the first episode, so I think we're going to be doing that from now on.
So what is ASMR?
It's actually this weird thing that some people experience when they hear sounds in a certain way. So it could be anything from somebody whispering, like I was just joking around, or there's one thing of people pushing things into sand, I think, and it makes like a very interesting crunching sound. Or when you're walking in the snow and you hear that crunching of the snow. A lot of just interesting sounds that even just pen clicking or rustling of hair or rubbing against the microphone like this. So all kinds of different things. People react to it, and it causes some sort of reaction in your brain, I think.
It's a euphoric etching. So ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. And
geez, you're way more prepared than I am.
Exactly right. And it's a feeling that starts sort of like on the scalp, so at the top of the head, and sort of makes its way back to the neck and the upper spine. It's supposed to be some sort of euphoric release.
And you can just type in the letters ASMR in YouTube and you'll find yourself going down a really bizarre rabbit hole of role-playing makeup and time to go to bed or visiting the dentist or just really weird things.
What I really like is that you're inviting our listeners to move away from our podcast and go to YouTube, where we are not currently hosting episode 4, and just letting them walk away from us.
They're not walking away. They can just pause, go to YouTube, watch whatever it is we're talking about, and then just come back.
Okay. All right. We'll see how that goes. So in the spirit of continuing to better ourselves, we're also embracing our speech patterns. So we were talking in the last episode about how we're hypercritical of the things we say. And I realized I say basically "and the thing is" with every single response when I try to explain something. And so I'm planning on working on that. And then you were saying that you are embracing the words "I mean."
I've noticed that now that a lot of people say it, and I just don't notice it during their podcasts. So I'm pretty sure that if I don't keep pointing it out every episode, nobody's going to notice that I say it. So I think it's fine.
So we're just burying this deep, and we'll come back to it at a later time.
Yeah, maybe at episode 50 when we reflect upon ourselves.
You know, when we throw a party for ourselves and only we show up, not even our families are going to show up.
Yeah, and our 30 listeners.
Speaking of 30 listeners, no, I don't have a follow-up with that. You do have an exciting decision to make in your near future, though, about your personal computing needs.
Well, I mean, I have my my Mac that I use, and I have my phone, but I want to get another iPad. I have an iPad mini right now that's 4 years old at this point, and it's been great. It does what it needs to do. So as long as I don't use anybody else's iPad, I think it's fine. But I'm in the market to get a new iPad. I think I want to get the big 12.9-inch iPad, but I have to wait because there's no new iPads right now. It's still the one that came out in October of 2015, and I feel that's a little old at this point, and I'm sure there's new iPads coming down somewhere down the line in the next few months. What's the difference between an iPad and a traditional computer at this point? They're getting pretty close, right? There's a lot of stuff you can do with just an iPad that with previous tablets of any kind you really couldn't do. The new iPads are extremely powerful. I think they're just as powerful as the MacBook, right? If you look at the actual benchmarks of them, they're pretty close together.
I mean, it also depends what you're trying to use your iPad for at the same time, right?
Yeah, so we can't do what we're doing right now, which
No.
is this type of podcasting, because a iOS device can't separate audio like a regular PC or Mac can. So the thing that we're doing right now, it may sound like we're in the same room. We're miles apart, actually.
Miles, we're Canadian.
We're kilometers apart. What we're doing is we're talking on Hangouts so we can hear each other, but we're recording each our own end of the conversation, and then Brian uses his magical editing abilities and puts everything together and makes it sound like we're in the same room.
I use an iPad 2 right now.
Yeah.
For my day-to-day stuff, and that's the thing, is I mostly use it for reading or YouTube watching, basically. Nothing more than that. So for me, my iPad needs are met.
Yeah, I think the iPad 2 and the iPad mini is exactly what an iPad 2 is. They're the same thing. They work great for that. That's exactly what I use my iPad mini for at this point. The problem is when I pick up an iPad Air 2 and I look at the screen and I press on anything on the screen and it goes so quickly to whatever website I want to go to or whatever, it's hard to go back. So I try to avoid newer iPads so that mine seems totally fine for now.
So you're embracing your current tech. Keeping with the theme of, small devices in the home, voice assistant speakers are becoming a huge part of the current tech game. So, there's Amazon has its own brand, and now Apple is also coming out with something.
Well, we're not sure about that, right? We don't want to get people too excited about Apple coming out with something. Echo came out. There's a new Echo, I think. Well, there's a couple of new Echoes, right? There's one that's called the Show and one that's called the Look. Both of them have cameras. One has a screen. Neither of which are actually available in Canada. We still can't get the Echo here. I don't think there's any voice-assisted things we have in Canada other than the stuff on our phones, right?
No, not right now. And so the new Echo does have a camera, and apparently the biggest selling point of the camera is for selfies. So coming back to our conversation a little while ago about Snapchat, etc., and duck faces, unfortunately, even the voice assistant wants you to take pictures of yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. Although it also helps you with your wardrobe, apparently. That's what the Look is for, so that you can kind of get a good look at what you're wearing and figure things out and what you should order from Amazon next. And the Show has the screen on it so that you can do sort of video calls. Although there's this weird thing where a video call will come in and people will be able to see you as they're calling if you enable that feature, although it'll be frosted for about 10 seconds and then they'll just show up and they'll be able to see what you're doing.
So it's kind of like all of those movies, science fiction movies, where there's that screen that just pops up automatically.
You're going to have to be like Zuckerberg and put some tape on your camera.
Or just not buy the Show.
Oh, well, that's the other option, yeah.
I find it interesting how they're trying to make these closed loop systems. Like, so for example, for Amazon Look, the idea that you have wardrobes and choices, and then it will probably in theory lead you back to the Amazon site for more choices in theory.
Of course. And then it'll keep tabs on that to know exactly what you've ordered and recommend certain things. And from what I understand, the people that use the Echoes really like them. They're really impressed with how it works. It's a kitchen appliance at this point, right? Everybody keeps it in the kitchen. One of the uses a lot of people have for it is using it as a timer for cooking. Apparently, it's quite helpful for that. And there's also the fact that you can just ask it for your weather without having to reach for your phone. It's always on. It's always listening, which is something that might bother a lot of conspiracy theorists.
At this point, I've already given up on the idea of privacy as a whole. Like, it's been proven now for years and years that the NSA can open up any phone at any time, and hear what's going on in a room, right?
So that's not fiction. That's actually something that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, no one's really going to care about what we have to say, and we're even recording it and just putting it out there for everybody to listen anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
So for me, yeah, there's no expectation of privacy, and sort of adjacent to that, do you find that devices like this may create further monopolies in terms of where we buy our day-to-day things?
For sure, especially if you really get sucked into the Amazon one, you're not going to really want to buy anything from anywhere else, and it's going to be pushing you towards buying things off Amazon. In the US, it seems like Amazon's a lot more useful than it is in Canada. There's a lot more things you can buy. There's much faster delivery. You have more options with a lot of different things. I think we just got Prime here. No, we've had Prime for a while in terms of just the delivery, but we just got Prime Video, right?
A couple of months ago, yeah.
And I tried Prime for a bit, but I don't order off Amazon enough to warrant spending the
$100, I think.
I think it's $80 a year. But the problem I find is that for the few weeks I had Prime, I just wanted to order all kinds of stuff.
It's so much easier that way because you don't have to hit that minimum order threshold, which is now $35. It used to be $25.
And so you end up spending more money on top of the $80 you spent on Prime. So I don't feel it's that necessary.
Amazon is gaming the human condition to such a way that it's going to become a monopoly sooner rather than later, I think, unfortunately.
And then they're going to branch out into space, right? Because they have their rockets that are working quite well, apparently. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have a bit of a little space war going on, right?
Which is I mean, in theory, it's great, but in practice, it's kind of boring to think about.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting aspect of tech right now, although there's some exciting aspects to it, right? That the rockets can go out and then land.
The only thing I care about rocket-wise is if they have lasers and can shoot at each other. Until that point, I'm not engaged.
So you have a few years to wait, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And going back to the rumor that Apple might jump into the cylinder talking thing, if they do, knowing Apple, it'll launch internationally right away, and I may have to buy one.
Out of loyalty, are you doing the sign of the apple to yourself right now?
I'm taking a crunch out of an apple, bite out of an apple for that. Yeah. No, I wanted a Sonos speaker for a long time, and this will probably be priced around the same as a Sonos speaker. So I think instead of buying the Sonos one, I'll just buy the Apple one.
So you're already, you're hardline Apple. You're already allowing Apple to correlate and document as well as classify your photos.
Yeah, they have all my pictures. So this week on Twitter, somebody posted a link to the XKCD comic about photo library management, and it kind of spoke to me because I don't know about you, but I have a lot of photos.
Not only do you have a lot of photos, but you have a whole backup system. You've explained this to me before about your photos.
I have about 26,000 photos and about 1,700 videos. Those are all in iCloud Photo Library, and that means they're on my phone and my Mac whenever I need them to be there, and they don't take up as much space.
How often do you feel the need to pull out a photo from that library?
Well, because of the new memories things that they added to the iPhoto, they're a lot of fun. My kids and I like looking at the pictures. They love seeing old pictures that pop up, especially ones before they were born, because their parents look weird.
So what you're saying is that you as a younger man, you looked weirder. Now you look okay.
Well, I looked fine, but I looked different to my kids, right?
Was there ever a long-haired phase?
Long-ish, but no, not really. I was never a long-haired kind of guy.
I can't wait for the next Throwback Thursday.
Yeah. Oh, I should post something, shouldn't I?
Please do.
So like I've always been really interested in managing my photos, as exciting as that sounds, right? I've gotten to the system now with iCloud Photo Library. I just kind of take pictures, not worry about them too much. And then once a month, I do a physical backup onto 3 separate hard drives.
3? Where do you keep these hard drives?
They're just behind my computer. You don't even see them. I plug them in so they don't make any noise. The iMac is extremely silent. And if you plug in an external hard drive, which aren't really that loud, I guess. I don't know if you've listened to how loud they can be.
I will admit that I do not sit around listening to hard drive noises.
Okay, well, they can be really loud when you compare them to the soft, quiet sounding fan of an iMac.
But 3?
Yeah, so, well, if one breaks, then I have a backup to that.
I think the word redundant, a redundant system here is sort of underwhelming to describe your process.
I also keep one at the office, just in case something happens to the 3 behind my computer.
Is there one at the bank?
No.
No or not yet?
No, I'm not gonna bring one to the bank. It's fine. I just keep my money.
Why? You're already this far out.
I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be okay. But
how far do these date from? Like, what is the earliest photo?
2003.
And what is the megapixel size on that?
Really small. I think that was on a 4 megapixel camera. Or 2 megapixel, actually. They're under a meg, those photos. So they hardly take up any space. So, but because of iCloud Photo Library, and I've noticed how well it works, I've not worried too much about losing any photos or anything. So I just, I don't worry about the backups as much as I used to, right? I trust the iCloud Photo Library, and I also use Google Photos.
How many of these photos have you printed out?
We're actually pretty good about printing out photos, but right now, there's 2 huge boxes of photos, about 1,000 photos that we printed out I'd say 2 or 3 years ago that we haven't gone through and put into albums yet. Our poor son, he's got like no photos of himself in the album, so he'll go and look at the albums that we have because we do like having physical photos. We have them on the bookshelf, and he'll go look. And he's like, "Oh, is that me?" I'm like, "No, that's your sister." "Is that me?" "No, that's another little boy." It's kind of sad that there's no physical pictures, but we look at them on the Apple TV. We'll look at them on the computer. He likes looking at photos.
So a few things. As a son of parents who didn't take pictures of their son, but their daughter for some reason for multiple years. So between the ages of 10 and 12 or 13, there are almost no pictures of me at all.
That's so sad.
So I understand what your son may be feeling right now. Also, that many redundant systems and your whole process strikes me as slightly narcissistic.
I would say more paranoid than anything that I'm going to lose these photos.
Well, I guess the first question would be, of these 26,000, how many are explicitly of you, let's say?
That's the thing. There's so few of me. Yeah, I'm hardly in any of these pictures.
Okay. And then what prompts you to have such a specific setup?
So I guess in 2002, when I first started using a digital camera, my hard drive failed and I lost about 400 or 500 photos that I had taken. So since then, I've been very careful about redundant backups. So it's not terribly exciting, right? It's not I was like scarred for life like Batman or something, and I've become like the Batman of backups. Yeah, I just want to be careful with that stuff because photos are certain things. One of the few things you have that you can't really get back. I do realize now that my parents were not that careful with photos of me, right? You'd get the negatives from the pharmacy and just throw them in a shoebox, and you would never really care about them ever again. I think we've become a little more worried about losing photos at this point, but I guess data is so much more fragile than physical objects.
Well, high quality physical objects, at least.
Yeah, I guess. Now, my question is, do you even care about any of this stuff? Because you strike me as somebody that's not too worried about his photos.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This man does not care about his photos.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I regularly delete photos that maybe I shunt off my devices. I don't really have a backup system. My significant other definitely has a way better system, including a portable hard drive for backing things up.
Look at her.
I honestly don't care all that much, to be honest with you. I'm more about embracing an experience than documenting it in certain ways. And
you're so much better than me.
I guess in a certain way it's kind of a problem from the outside, but I don't value photos as much as other people might in those ways. I do value media. I value things that I've worked on, projects that I've undertaken, video, audio, etc. But specifically still images, not really.
So do you back up our podcasts?
Twice, yeah.
Oh, see, look at that. So that's fine.
Yeah, but that's from a place of narcissism.
Oh, well, what are you going to do?
Double Density. Welcome back to the Double Density podcast. And in continuing with the idea that Angelo is an old man, he has a pet peeve that he wants to throw it to the audience and see how they feel about things, right?
So there's something I see a lot happening when I commute to work. So I see a lot of people, and I'm always fascinated to see how other people use their tech, and obviously the most common is their smartphones or their tablets. And something I see people do a lot on iOS devices. I don't see this on Android because I'm not sure how it's done on Android, but I see it all the time on iOS devices is people double tapping the home button. The little windows of the apps pop up and they flick every single one of them away, thinking that that'll magically do something to help their phones. And it's not. It's not doing anything good, and it's possibly doing something bad and the opposite of what they think it's doing.
Hit us with it.
My understanding is people think that'll save their battery because the app is in the background doing horrible things to their phone. Whereas actually the way iOS works is that anything that's not in the foreground is actually frozen unless it's explicitly allowed to run a background process. So something like music or a podcasting app will run in the background because you're using it. It's playing music or it's playing audio. The removing of those apps basically takes them out of memory. And the reason I say it's actually could be possibly worse for your battery is that, let's say you want to go back to that app, you have to put it back into memory, and it takes cycles to do that. And as minuscule as it is, it'll take some of your battery. So you're actually not doing anything to help. You're probably not doing anything to harm other than make me think less of you for doing it.
So if you see someone flicking, it's either they're playing Pokemon Go, which is probably not the case, or they're viciously closing apps because they think that they are in dire need of saving battery.
Yeah, I wish I knew how this theory propagated, and it's propagated so much that this week, one of the students, the older students at my wife's school, brought back an iPad to her, and said and told her that she had to open up all the apps so that she can flick them away, or else they're going to be wasting her battery power. And I'm very proud of my wife that she told the 11-year-old that she was wrong and that she doesn't need to do that because it actually does absolutely nothing.
So your nerdiness is actually rubbing off on your wife in a positive way.
I was really impressed.
That's great. For me, when I flick away apps, it's more so for cleanliness when I try to access things, because I know I won't be using certain apps throughout the day. So, for example, if I open up a banking app, I know I'm not going to use it all day, so I'll generally close it, because I'll cycle through 4 or 5 apps mainly throughout my day. So I know what I want to have easily accessible versus what I use once in a while.
But the thing is you don't need to do it at all.
Yeah, but if I'm scrolling through, I don't want to scroll through 30 apps, right?
So I never actually scroll through apps like that way.
You go through the home button on your phone and you hit that?
Yeah, but I run my phone real lean. So I'd be curious to know how many apps you have on your phone at this point. Do you know? So go into general, go into about, and you'll see how many apps. I have 52.
I have 42.
Oh, okay, not bad. So you run pretty lean as well. So because I've heard of people having hundreds of apps. So at that point, yeah, I guess you can start flicking some away. But I don't think people are doing that for that reason, because a lot of the times I see them flicking them away, they have maybe 5 apps open and they just flick them all away.
I'm more of like I determine what my single usage apps of the day will be, and then I go from there.
I guess that's fine.
Oh, so you've deigned me like an okay Apple user right now.
So far, so good. We'll see.
I'm top tier.
I don't know about that.
Double density. We're back here with episode 4 of the Double Density podcast, and we're going to switch gears a bit, going from cell phone etiquette to something a little more out there, and I do literally mean out there. So this week on Realtor.ca, someone had posted a listing for a house in Brantford, Ontario, and you start looking at the listing, it seems normal enough, but when you start peering inside the house and you take a look at the photos, it's actually a house full of clown memorabilia. Angelo, have you had a chance to take a look at these pictures?
So yeah, it came up on my my Facebook. At first, I was wondering what the thing was. Like, okay, it looks fine. Then I thought, oh, it has something to do with the weird shed in the backyard. That's the big garage. I'm like, oh, what's going to be in there? And I was like, oh, no, it's just really neatly organized tools. I'm like, oh, maybe it's a serial killer type thing. Oh, it's the tools. And then I keep scrolling, nice backyard. And then, oh, my God, I get to the living room. And there's the clowns.
Filled with clowns.
It's really, really creepy.
So speaking of creepy, though, I would use the word haunting to describe it.
Yeah, you know what? That's I'm just looking at the kitchen right now with the clowns that'll stare at you as you're cooking on the stovetop. There's the Remax thing on the fridge. Just that it's like these clowns. They're everywhere. They're in the bathroom. There's one popping up behind you on the toilet. There's a creepy one. There's 2 of them together in the bedroom. I don't know if you noticed those. There's one on the bicycle.
I did.
Or is it a tricycle? And one on the swing. Yeah,
it's truly haunting, and I don't know. Have you ever been anywhere that was haunted, or do you feel like there was something haunting about it?
So, my mom had an aunt who lived in New Jersey. We loved visiting there, and in her house she had. This is a long time ago too, so I'm not remembering everything perfectly, right? But up in some of the rooms upstairs, there were these dolls that hung on the wall, and it's actually not even that bad. It's just The dolls were kind of creepy to me as a child, and but that's really the extent. And my grandmother's house, which is so, my aunt in New Jersey is my grandmother's my grandmother's sister. So my grandmother in Italy, her house was quite old, and also it seemed not. I don't think it's haunted. It wasn't haunted. I don't believe in that stuff. But it you could make your imagination run wild. I think would be the right word, because it was 5 or 6 floors. That thing, it was quite small, but it's in a hundred. I think the building was at least 100 years old, and it was it was drafty, and you heard noises, and it wasn't exactly a place I'd like to really hang out alone in, especially when I was 10 years old.
Was it clown free though?
I don't think there were clowns. Probably dolls. Dolls are common. One of the earliest pictures on my Instagram account is these creepy dolls we found that my wife found, that I think they were from her grandmother's house.
So my instance of a haunting place is a little bit closer in terms of space than Italy. So 10 years ago, friends and I, on a normal September evening, piled into my friend's van and headed to Franklin, Quebec, which is about an hour southwest of Montreal, to go visit the Dorea Institute. So I don't know if you know anything about the Dorea Institute, but it used to be basically a series of mental facilities for children, including the infamous Duplessis Orphans.
Yeah, that's an actually really sad story.
And what we'll do is we'll link to that, because I really don't want to get into that specific aspect of it, but we'll link to that in the show notes. But yeah, so 2 friends and I had gone, and what we had done, and I think you'll enjoy this, we had set up a tape recorder just in case we got some EVPs. You know, you never know when you might get some ghost voices. So luckily...
Do you want to maybe explain what EVPs are?
Sure. So it's electronic voice phenomena. So basically the idea that the ghosts from the beyond are speaking to us, only we can't necessarily hear it using the naked ear, but in recordings you possibly can hear them. There are a lot of people who do this sort of thing and go to like supposedly haunted places like old jails and things and set up tape recorders, analog of course, and hang out and wait the night. But some people also have switched over to digital.
So that's the thing, right? I thought it didn't work with digital, because the whole thing with EVPs is that it's usually an anomaly in the analog tape recording, and they're kind of making out what they want to hear with it. Or is that just me being too skeptical?
I think it might be you being too realistic about the whole thing, right?
I know, I'm so boring.
So we had parked in back of, because the locals don't like people visiting, because when you go there, there's a ton of graffiti, there's a ton of destroyed buildings and things, and so they very much...
I'm looking at the pictures right now.
They very much discourage people from going there. Which I get. I mean, it's a very... the night we had gone, it had rained all day, but it had stopped in the evening, and it gave off a really musty smell. So there are daycares. So if you go to the basement of one of these places, there's, murals drawn on the walls of, happy little creatures. And then there's also a gym and a sort of, I guess, like mini high school there, because there were lockers and a couple of classrooms, I guess, and also a gymnasium where the basketball net hung in the middle of the gymnasium with a gurney. It was very, very creepy. And then there's also another... I guess medical office would be the best way to put it, because there's a dentist chair on the second floor of the rickety old wooden house, which had decayed beyond any sort of livable kind of status.
And there's something inherently frightening about abandoned medical equipment that I think it's a common trope in those mental asylum horror movie type deals. But it is something that, I guess it's because as humans, we are afraid of doctors in a certain way because of the bad news they can give us, or dentists because the sounds and people working on your mouth can be quite frightening for most people. So just putting them into an abandoned old medical area, it seems really frightening and haunting, I think is the right word for that. Not haunted, haunting.
Haunting, yeah. Both haunted and haunting, because, this is a place where children who were falsely declared mentally unfit were sent to go live out a large portion of their young lives, and some people didn't make it, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that there is a haunted aspect to it. Did I see any ghosts? No.
Okay, yeah. I was saying, yeah, okay, I was saying more in the haunted ghost type thing, but yeah, no, in the actual real meaning of the word, yes.
Right. And then I was going to get to the second part where I was going to say, do I think there were ghosts? Who knows? It's fun to think about, right? Like, I think that you and I both can agree that thinking about the paranormal is a lot of fun.
Of course, that's the whole fun about it, is that so there's no real proof, right? That's why it's called paranormal, and it's beyond normal. But the whole fun in it is wondering what it is that elicits these feelings in people when you're in these places. Because I can say I don't believe in ghosts and all that stuff, but I wouldn't want to spend the night there. I would not feel comfortable at all, even though I know there's really nothing bad there. It's just a horrible place to hang out in. I hardly even want to go camping. I can't imagine staying in a horrible, old, musty smelling building.
Well, we were there on the compound for about 2 hours, I'd say, and so we set up this tape recorder in the basement of the daycare, and we decided to go as a group take a look around. So we're doing this thing, and we go back to collect the tape recorder, get back to the van, and the van had a tape deck, so we put the cassette in, and you can hear us leaving, and then 3 minutes out, the tape stops.
That's creepy.
And so we check the tape recorder, it works fine. We check the tape, it works fine. We start recording ourselves beyond that, and it works. But for some reason, 3 minutes out, it had stopped working as we had left the building, and none of us had run back because we were all together the entire time. That is the creepier part of that, not necessarily the idea that like these are classically haunted places or like even haunting. I guess in the daylight it looks a lot better, but we had picked to go at night because it was easier to go in and not be seen.
What happened? The button just popped up as if somebody pressed stop.
Yeah, we're not sure what exactly had happened. It was very, very strange because, yeah, we all looked at each other in disbelief, and none of us had gone back and done it because we were all together the entire time when we were searching these buildings, right? So on the one side, there's a couple of daycares, and then there's a road, and then on the other side, in a semicircle, I guess, were all these other buildings, right? So the gymnasium, the high school, one of the other living quarters, and then the medical office were on that side, and it would have been hard for one of us to run over, stop the tape, and then run back because we would have seen that happen.
Was it the craggly old caretaker that did that?
Funnily enough, there is one of the neighbors who can be characterized as like a craggly old janitor man who will call the cops on you if he sees you.
You and that what's the saying from Scooby Doo?
Those meddling kids.
Yeah, and their dog.
I mean, just to add to that, the van we were driving was a large passenger van, so it could have looked like the Mystery Machine.
Would you go back?
Would I go back? I don't think I would, because I think most of the buildings have been destroyed in the 10 years since I was last there, to the point where it's not even fun to look at things anymore. Because when I was there, it kind of, people had gotten to it, but it wasn't as badly decomposed and as badly graffitied as it is now. If you do a quick Google search for Dorea, which is Dorea, in Franklin, you'll see a lot of people have since gone up and urban explored the place and taken pictures, and you can see the deterioration of these places. So no, I don't think I'd go back now necessarily.
There's a cool abandoned building near my house. I think it's an old pumping station, because near my house there used to be a sugar beet factory. I'm sending you a picture of it right now through
Internet.
Through the internet, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it's a pretty cool building. I mean, it seems like it was burned at one point, if you look at it carefully. But I wouldn't want to be in there at night.
So here's where I kind of have a question. So you don't believe in the majority of paranormal things, yet you still have a sense of fear of these places.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's just I think that's built into us to have a bit of a fear of the unknown and a sense of danger, right? Otherwise, we all would have been eaten by lions at one point. We kind of have to understand that certain things do seem dangerous to us, and an old creaky building can be dangerous, and our mind kind of makes it more than it actually is. And there's also a bit of, let's say you're alone, well, that's going to make your mind go crazy. But if you're with somebody else, the 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the group mentality is you're going to feed off of each other and possibly start seeing things that aren't necessarily there and agreeing with each other, even though you may or may not have seen the same thing.
Let me throw something out there that kind of has to do with this too. I think, ironically enough, some of the fear that we have within us is due to other people doing the exact same thing, scaring you. So, when we were at this institute, we kept saying, like, what if someone else pulls up and they also have flashlights and they're taking a look around? That spook factor of our fellow man, never mind ghosts or specters or, other haunted things. It's the idea that there are other people here with us who we don't know. It's literally a fear of the unknown.
That's exactly it. I mean, we can say we don't know if there's ghosts or not. I think I'm pretty confident saying there's no such thing. But if ever we prove that there's ghosts, I'll change my tune right away.
Speaking of haunted places, when I was growing up, the neighborhood I lived in was adjacent to the Douglas Hospital, so it's both a mental institution as well as a research institute. And inside of it, if you take a walk inside of it, there's like a mini village in there. So there is a gigantic barn that I don't know if they use. There's a couple of gas station pumps. There's a greenhouse which gets used. So within the confines of the hospital itself, apart from the actual administrative buildings, there's actually like a lot of different, almost mini villagey kinds of aspects there too.
I had no idea about that.
So I think I have a couple of pictures. If I can, I'll throw them up in the show notes somewhere. But yeah, it's really weird. And I love to take people there because, once you get across the sort of main buildings and, the grounds are open to the public from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that. So you're able to walk through them, but it's this weird thing where you kind of walk in and suddenly it feels like you're in this very weird lost city almost that isn't quite that big. I'd say it's maybe like 3 or 4 city blocks large, but it's this weird feeling of going from field to the inside of a mini city.
The idea of visiting these abandoned places is actually pretty interesting. I don't know if I'd go out and do it, but there are so many places that people consider haunted in one way or another, and I think that would be a fun idea to explore in the future, maybe taking some time and looking at the different types of places that people think can be haunted. I know a lot of castles. People love going and visiting those because they're so old. There's, I think you can actually visit the castle of Vlad the Impaler, right?
Yeah, you can.
And look, no matter what you believe in, that place has a lot of history, and it's a lot of horrible history. So you can imagine what happened around there, and just think of what these walls have witnessed. And if there is such a thing as whatever you think ghosts are, if it's just your imagination or something electromagnetic, or if it's the actual spirits of the dead, which I highly doubt it is, but it can be. Who knows? There's got to be something there in those types of places, right?
So the differentiation here is haunting, yes, haunted, no?
Yeah, I would say that. It's sort of like an UFO is an unidentified flying object, but yes, UFOs exist, but they're not aliens.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I think you'd make a very boring ghost.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, oh hi, I don't exist. Don't mind me.
I feel like you'd also yell at people for using their future tech wrong.
Or I'd whisper like this.
Double density. So the date that we're recording this today is May 11th, and May 11th is a special place in the heart of all World of Warcraft players because it is the anniversary of the infamous Leeroy Jenkins video, right? So originally occurring on May 11th, 2005, it involved Ben Schultz, who created Leeroy. So the video starts with this whole team of players getting ready to raid something, and then Schultz's character, Jenkins, with the great yell of Leeroy runs in, and the team decides to follow him before having properly planned out their strategy. And then, of course, Jenkins ruins their plan, and everyone gets killed.
Well, the funny thing about the video is I had rewatched it today, and they spend all this time really planning out this raid. So I never actually played this type of game. It's World of Warcraft, right? I never actually got into that. But it was just funny to hear them meticulously plan this whole idea of getting in. One guy was going to take care of something, another guy was going to do something else. And the whole time you see Leeroy AFK, right? So he's away.
Right.
So he's not listening to any of this. And then he just shows up and ruins it for everyone.
So the way I understand it is that they were actually like LANing, so they were just together as a group, and apparently everyone, according to Schultz in an interview with NPR, they were all drinking 40s and just yelling at each other, so he decided to go for it anyways.
Oh, okay. So I was completely wrong.
So there's also a theory out there that this whole video was staged, which I would probably believe.
Well, see, so that's why I created that whole lore for myself about it.
See, I like once again, I like the idea of self-mythologizing these things. So I'm approving your ability to create this mythology.
Thank you.
But yes, it's been 12 years since one. I'd suggest that this is probably one of the not earlier, but like mid-period internet memes. Like the idea of Leeroy Jenkins in popular culture had existed. Yeah, I mean, like there's a bunch of references to it in movies as well as TV shows.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you meant before
Oh
2005.
no! What I had meant is that like, subsequently, a lot of different websites and movies and TV shows then referenced this battle cry.
Yeah, well, that's it. It was pretty funny, and I guess it was one of the earlier memes, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's as early as some of the E-Bombs World stuff or the Something Awful stuff, but yes, 2005 they say is like mid-period, like Silver Age, a memery.
And then that was pre the caption pictures things, right?
Yes, pre macro meme, I guess.
From the way I understand it, every image on the internet is a meme, right?
I mean, that's a whole other bucket of snakes we can get into another day if you want.
If you want, yes.
I don't think we should, but yeah, here's to Leeroy Jenkins, who, at least he has chicken. From embracing our ticks to iPads versus traditional computers, to the idea of having a voice assistant in your house, and also the idea that, maybe this voice assistant may be haunted. We've covered a lot of different ground tonight, I feel, in episode 4 of the Double Density podcast.
We've had a lot of fun talking about these things, and maybe one day we'll visit a haunted place and record live from there. What do you think about that, Brian?
I would be so into that. Also, I want to give you a silver medal of approval, Angelo. This is the first episode of 4 in which you did not reference another podcast.
Congratulations, me.
I hope that you wear that badge proudly.
I'll wear it on my neck tomorrow as I mow the lawn.
As always, you can check us out on Twitter at double_density. That's one word with an underscore in the middle. You can also check us out on Facebook by searching the Double Density Podcast, as well as Instagram. So at Instagram, we are Double Density Podcast, one word. You can also subscribe to us via iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, etc. Or you can find us on SoundCloud under the Double Density moniker. So this has been episode 4 of the Double Density Podcast. Tune in next week as we do a 13-part playthrough of the classic game Myst.
See ya.
Bye!
I was waiting.